2 years ago, a young female intellectual named Zhou was assigned to teach at Longkou Elementary School in Huangyuan County. Teacher Zhou was young and beautiful, quite conscious of her appearance, and often took care to dress herself up. One day, she needed to go to the city to buy some things. She braided her hair into 2 pigtails and waited at the village entrance for a passing tractor to hitch a ride. Back then, this was a common way for people to travel long distances. Several others were already sitting in the back of the tractor, chatting and laughing. However, halfway through the journey they encountered a large truck. The road was narrow, and the 2 vehicles passed very close to each other. By a stroke of terrible luck, Teacher Zhou's braid got caught in the truck's wheel. She let out a scream as she was yanked off the tractor. The people on the tractor shouted frantically for the driver to stop, but the engine was likely too loud, and the driver didn't hear them. Teacher Zhou was dragged for dozens of meters before the driver realized something was wrong. By the time the truck stopped, her braid, along with a piece of her scalp, had been torn off. She was already gone. Teacher Zhou's parents had passed away long ago, and she had no relatives. The school held a memorial service for her and buried her in the Martyrs' Cemetery. But the story didn't end there. Longkou Elementary School ran a literacy class for illiterate women in the village, teaching them to read and write. The classes were held in the evenings, and people attended whenever they could. Not long after Teacher Zhou's burial, a young woman, who had been working late and was rushing to the literacy class, encountered a woman in a red dress near the school. The figure was swaying back and forth. The young woman, terrified, fainted on the spot. It wasn't until the literacy class ended that someone found her collapsed on the ground. They helped her up, patting and pinching her to wake her. When she finally came to, her face was pale and she was gasping for air. She shouted Teacher Zhou 3 times before taking her last breath. There was only one Teacher Zhou at Longkou Elementary School, and the story spread quickly. Soon after, strange things started happening on the road where Teacher Zhou had died. Vehicles passing through would often experience brake failures, unable to slow down. Some drivers, glancing in their rearview mirrors, saw a woman with hair on only half her head, the other half exposing her skull, staring at them in a way that defied reason. Many drivers, startled by the sight, ended up in accidents, some fatal. There were at least a dozen different accounts of encounters with the woman in red. The nearby villagers, at their wits' end, decided to find a shaman to deal with the situation. In those days, finding someone skilled in such matters was difficult. Eventually, they found a man who had done this kind of work before but hadn't dared to mention it in recent years. After much pleading, he agreed to help. Since he didn't give his name, the villagers called him Khadijia, a nod to his mage-like abilities. Khadijia was indeed skilled. He first sought out the people who had been on the tractor with Teacher Zhou, and those who had organized her funeral, asking about the details. He quickly identified the problem. When Teacher Zhou was buried, she was dressed in a red dress. In the 1970s, red fabric was hard to come by and expensive, but it was also beautiful, and the dress was one of Teacher Zhou's most cherished possessions. Since she had cared so much about her appearance in life, the school thought it fitting to let her leave beautifully. Khadijia was stunned. "Who buries someone in red?" he exclaimed. He explained that they needed to exhume the coffin and remove the red dress, or her resentment would linger, and more incidents would occur. He gathered 10 young men born in the years of the dragon or tiger, and brought 5 black bulls to Teacher Zhou's grave. Word of the exhumation spread, and villagers gathered from afar, filling the hillside to watch. The soil was soon dug up, revealing the coffin. But Khadijia faced another challenge. The Yin energy inside the coffin was strong, and if it touched the ground and absorbed Yang energy, it could lead to a corpse reanimation. To prevent this, he laid down a sheet of iron for the coffin to rest on. However, when it came time to open the coffin, none of the 10 young men were willing to do it, fearing some kind of curse. They weren't fools. If it was a simple task, why would Khadijia specifically request those born in the dragon or tiger years? They had already agreed to carry the coffin, but they refused to open it. At this point, a few elderly villagers stepped forward from the crowd. They said they were old, had lived long enough, and were willing to help for the sake of peace and future generations. The coffin's nails were pried open one by one. When the lid was lifted, everyone gasped. Teacher Zhou's body was propped up on her elbows, her head tilted upward as if trying to sit up. Her eyes were wide open, her mouth agape, and her hair had grown twice as long as it was at her burial, coiled inside the coffin. Khadija sighed and instructed the group to change Teacher Zhou's red dress to a white one. The crowd was silent. Who would dare? Someone boldly suggested burning the body, but Khadija said it wouldn't work. We need to act while the sun is still up, he urged. Once it sets, none of us who touched her will escape. If you're scared, take a few swigs of liquor to steady your nerves. In the end, the same elderly men who opened the coffin stepped forward. After downing some liquor, they lifted Teacher Zhou out of the coffin and changed her clothes. Khadija instructed them to place her in a spot shielded from yang energy, hoping the sunlight would dispel her resentment. But after hours in the sun, there was no effect. With no other options, Khadija turned to grains, which he said were imbued with the essence of heaven and earth and excellent for exorcising evil. He sprinkled a handful over Teacher Zhou's body. On the third sprinkle, her body moved, her mouth and eyes closed, and her head and hands relaxed. Khadija then lined the coffin with roasted rapeseeds, placed Teacher Zhou back inside, and covered her with another layer of seeds. He drew a pentagram array on the coffin with vermilion ink, placed the 5 black bowls on the corners, and recited an incantation. The gist was, heaven values life. Teacher Zhou, when you count all these seeds, you can turn over. The coffin was then reburied, and a concrete slab, roughly the size of the coffin, was poured over it. After that, no one reported seeing the woman in red again. The concrete slab is still there, and some bloggers have even visited the site. However, it's said that the slab cracked at some point and was later replaced.